How's it going, YouTube? Coming today with another video, and today, guys, the video is going to be the updated tier list for March 2026. I enjoy doing these videos a lot just because of the fact that we can look at these month to month and really pay attention to the movement and talk about all the events, all the results, which there have been a lot lately, and where these decks have been doing well, where they've been doing worse, where they could be going, where they could be doing not so well. There's a lot of changes in this game month to month, hour to hour. And this game changes quick, so you want to make sure that you're always up to date, and I'll talk about why some of these decks have been performing so well. The first one here, though, is going to be DDD. Now, this deck has 7 tops since the last ban list, which is very cool. This deck is very hard to play. Going first is a little easier, but you're still setting up a pretty complex board. You want to make sure that you can really manage your resources. But going second, this deck is not forgiving. It's very hard to play a deck like this going second when you really need your continuous spells to just stick to the board, right? There's a lot of things that can go wrong in a deck that involves especially the pendulum cards, because you can play less non-engine, right? So a deck like this really takes the time and practice that you need to do well with it. And if you do want to pick this deck up, I'm not wanting to discourage you, but this is a deck that you're really going to want to spend some time with. And I feel like with the upcoming ban list, which is truthfully around the corner, even though it doesn't really feel like it, this is a deck that probably survives that no problem. And, you know, this will be a deck that if you want to spend like $100 and get something that can be pretty reliable, this is probably an option for you. But still very hard, not the best deck in the room, but it can be very rewarding. Now, the next one here is going to be Mitsurugi. Now, the FTK is very strong. If you want to look at Josh Kipp's channel, the deck itself is very good. You can also look at this as being 1.5 because of the splashability of Mitsurugi. It goes in a lot. But this deck is probably going to be no longer after the next ban list. Considering that there were no new cards printed for Mitsurugi, that's a huge red flag going into the next ban list season. So if you have any high rarity cards for this, I'd probably start moving them as soon as possible. And I could be wrong, but if you get no new cards in a reprint set where the other decks did, it doesn't look too good, you know? So that's something where this has been an issue for a while, and I'm assuming the next list is going to take care of this. Now we have back-to-back rogue decks. We have RB and Tierlist. These decks are not the best right now. There are different variations of Tier, and then RB has pretty much always been the same. And neither one of them really have a crazy showing at the moment at all. But there's still decks that could have potential, so I always have them in the rogue category. But as of right now, they're just underperforming, especially with everyone citing things like Dimensional Fissure, and then especially with things like Tier playing as Dracotail, and they have cards that will bounce your cards, which you want them to be destroyed, obviously. And then you also have things like Sting to worry about. There's a lot of issues with playing a deck like this right now. So, not the greatest right now, but maybe in the future. The next one here is going to be Elvin Note Fimith. Now, the deck itself is not the greatest. It only has 2 tops so far, and it can do well. It's not the best, but I would still put it in like bottom of tier 2, just because it's starting to do a little better, and maybe once the deck gets figured out a little more, we'll see a little bit better showing. But as of right now, it only has 2 tops, and we'll have to wait and see what more the deck can do. Now, these next 2 shouldn't really be a shocker. Really, these next 3. We have Radiant Typhoon, VSK9, and a Yummy. Now, any variant of Yummy right now, whether you're playing the Azamina Yummy, you're playing the Fiendsmith Yummy, both fantastic. They're both going to do really well right now, and this is a deck that you can pick up and perform with. VSK9, the last 300th YCS series that we saw, the last 3 of them, it won 2 and got second at the other. And then I believe Radiant Typhoon picked up 2 YCS wins as well. So VSK9 is like the best, right? And then if you're talking about consistency by the numbers, Dracotail is considered the best right now, but VSK9 is very close with being the best as well. I'd say they're like tied. Any one of these 4 decks, if you want to pick them up right now and play, you're going to do fine. Now, that's not without practice. You want to make sure that you are practicing every day if you go to a big event. But these 4 decks are going to do absolutely fantastic for you no matter what. And the next ban list that comes, I'm assuming that it's going to be a slaughterhouse with some of these. So we'll have to wait and see what they do. But the format is like pretty diverse right now. There's a lot of different decks that you can play, which is pretty cool. And you see that there's still a lot more to talk about. So there's going to be quite a few that are added onto this list. But what's interesting is right now you can probably play like the top 10 decks and do pretty okay at an event. So definitely keep that in mind. The next one here is going to be Malice. Weirdly enough, Binder got banned and this deck just was like, yeah, it doesn't matter, we're fine. I believe it secured 3 top 4s in the 300th series, which is like actually insane. Malice without Binder, just going Crypto OTK and setting up with Heat Soul going first. Deck is very strong. Deck is still just like Cybers the deck, right? So definitely very interesting to see. A lot of people just like don't care too much about Lancia, and so they've just been getting away with a lot. And the deck itself can still put up lethal very easy. So a lot of people just cut like GWC. They started cutting out a couple cards that they didn't necessarily need. And I know the last I saw, like March hairs were going up to like $20 a pop too. So the deck itself is definitely gaining some popularity, which is pretty cool. The next one here too that you really just have to respect is Lunalite. The deck itself has just been performing. And shout out to my friend Julius for getting top 8. I believe it was at the Kentucky Regional with Lunalite as well. I know he's been trying to get that done, so very cool. Lunalite is a very interesting deck right now and definitely is kind of scary if your opponent just goes ahead and puts up the double Liger, SP, Baguska, right? You got to be able to out that. And people are siding Lava Golem right now. That is a very real side card. So definitely got to be mindful of that on the Lunalite player's part. But at the same point in time, the deck is very strong and has definitely proven that it can be a top contender at the moment. Gem, Momento, both of these decks I would say are tier 2 right now. They're both capable of performing. They both can do very well. Just not very represented right now. And I feel like, again, with Dimensional Fissure running out everywhere currently, has been a huge issue. Especially a lot of people citing Retaliating Sea. Also a huge issue for decks like these, especially because they both use spells to fuse. So definitely can be a massive issue. And both of these are very strong, but sometimes when there's so much targeted hate for specific decks in the sideboards, unfortunately other decks move down the tier list because now they're getting hit with things that they weren't ready for. Now, same as Elvin Note, Aniacraft only has 2 tops right now. And the deck itself is very interesting. It's just another stun deck that will burn out eventually. But, I mean, like, stun decks never really stay around for too long. Like, Flu was really good, and this is, like, kind of like Flu in a way. It's really just, like, Vanity's Ruler Turbo or, like, Zaborg, right? So, definitely very interesting, but not a deck that I could see sticking around for all too long. Bottom of 1.5, Branded Despia. This deck has been topping a lot lately without the Dracotail cards, which is kind of crazy, but the deck itself still has some pretty quality cards, Branded Fusion alone, right? So the deck itself still works, but it's still one of those decks that people put a lot of time and effort into this one to perform. So make sure that if this is a deck that you're picking up, you're really going out of your way to understand every line in the deck, because if you don't, you probably won't perform as well as someone who's really putting in the time. This is one of those decks where it's very much so a pilot diff. And if you don't really understand the deck or you're missing some of the lines, it can cost you a tournament run. Top of tier 2, we have Fire King and Azamina Orcus. Now, I really do like both these decks right now. Azamina Orcus is definitely the deck choice for me at the moment. I think this deck is very, very strong. There are other decks right now that are performing better at the moment. Not to say that these decks are performing rather poorly, but they're both very strong in their own regard. The amount of non-engine that they can play, not to mention they're both impulse decks, is very impressive. The decks themselves will take some time to learn, a little bit less than the top decks, but especially Fire King. This one's going to be a little bit more practice heavy, but they're both very strong. And if you want to bring these two to an event, I think that you can do just as well as any of the top decks at the moment. It's just got to be your day on some of your interactions, because again, with card quality, sometimes these cards are just not going to carry you to the win. Whereas some of the other decks are just like innately more powerful, right? And like some of those cards can help you recover from mistakes better than the tier 2 decks will. The tier 2 decks basically mean you can bring them to an event, but you have to play perfect because they are punishing if you mess up at all. Talking about a deck that if you mess up that you're going to be behind is Striker. Now, Striker is a very strong deck. It's definitely one of the best going second decks that we've had. And, you know, consistently this deck was winning and topping YCS's back in its prime, and it's still doing well today, which is very cool, especially since the whole deck just got reprinted. The only expensive card in the deck is now a common, which is kind of nuts. And even Azalea, too, common, but you have Zero and Azalea's commons. And now we're getting Camellia, which is pretty cool. And that's another reason why Yummy's up in tier 1 too, because any 2 effect monsters now is full Yummy combo with Camellia, which is nuts. But Striker is definitely a deck where if you play the deck enough, you will get rewarded. This deck can definitely tear through boards. It can set up a board now, which is very cool. And it can perform very well under things like Diefly as well. So this is a deck that if you are prepared for the meta and you build your deck to beat the meta, you probably will tear through an event, which is really cool for a deck like this, but it still has its very obvious weaknesses. 1.5, we have Magnet Warrior, Fiendsmith. Now, this deck is very strong. Being able to punish your opponent when they impulse you is really funny as well, because if your opponent impulses you playing this and you make the conductor that makes everything earth, your opponent can't activate their monster effects because they used impulse, which is really funny. This deck puts up a pretty crazy board with Nat Beast, and it can push through a lot. The amount of non-engine your deck can play is really strong too. So this is something where if you want a really cheap deck to pick up that does very well, it's definitely just Magnet Warrior. I like this deck a lot. Next up is going to be Kel Tune. It's going to be in tier 2. The deck itself is very interesting. It's been doing a little bit better than we thought initially. I think the deck is still just very gimmicky right now, just only tuner kind of thing. You know, I know that they're getting like new rare cards, but there's still a lot of other decks that I'd play before this. It does have a couple tops to it right now, which is definitely interesting to see. But definitely not something that is as bad as we first thought, but not going to be something that is going to be like over the top crazy either. So definitely take your time to practice if you want to learn a deck like this and play it, but there are a lot of other decks that I would still play before it. The next one here being Blue Eyes, Rogue, probably like somewhere up here, top of Rogue, next to Aniacraft. Deck itself is very interesting. Again, less Stroll in the format, but it's still not performing as well as it could be versus other decks right now. Just hit by a lot of side options right now that is really unfortunate for the deck, and the card quality just isn't as high as some of the other cards that you see here. For higher, it's going to be in tier 2 as well. It's going to be K9 for higher. The new cards are like fine. They're not necessarily crazy. It has a couple tops as well, but it's not necessarily something that I would really go out of my way to play at the moment. I feel like there's a lot of other decks right now that I pick up prior to that. I really do like Magnet Warrior right now, so if you're looking for something to play, that is definitely the one that you'd want to play. Another couple decks that have some tops here, just a few, but it's going to be Odeon and it's going to be the Archmage deck. Definitely very interesting. Again, a lot of different decks right now are doing fairly well at the moment, and the format itself is pretty diverse and open. So there are a lot of different decks that if you want to go to an event with right now, you'll probably do pretty okay. And that's something that we haven't seen in a very long time. So it's definitely very cool at the moment just because there's so many different options. But both of these are rather inexpensive for the most part as well. Not as inexpensive as other options, but they are some pretty good pickups if you want to try something new and have a lot of fun at an event with something that can still do fairly well. Bottom of 1.5, we have White Forest Azamina. These cards have been popping off lately, especially with Gmod. This deck is really good right now. It's really strong, and it's something that I definitely implore you to look at if you haven't already, just because the deck itself is actually doing pretty okay. And that's pretty surprising because that's a deck that was really low on my list for a while, but it's slowly climbed the ranks, and honestly right now, it's a pretty good contender. Now, for the next one, it's going to be Crystron. This is going to be pretty close to the top of tier 2 as well. If not the top of tier 2, it's going to be K9 Crystron. And then to follow it up is just going to be Sword Soul, and that's just going to be in Rogue. Just because I think that build is really cool and it's something that can definitely have potential in the future. But this is where I have everything placed for right now, so definitely let me know what you think down below in the comment section and what you would change and what you want to see in the future for videos. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.